Hey, what's up, guys? A couple of notes before we get started today. Number one, thank you so much for 100,000 subscribers. We hit that milestone on Tuesday of this week, and it's just absolutely insane. I can't really think of words to say right now. However, there will be a proper 100,000 subscriber bonus video coming. This is not it. And the other thing I want to say is that I'm veering a little bit off course from my original planned schedule, because in last week's video on public speaking, I said the next video would be on presentations. And because I'll be flying out to Vermont next Wednesday to give a presentation of my own, I haven't had enough time to really put the quality and preparation into that video that I want and that I think you guys deserve. So I'm going to put that one off a little bit. I'm going to get through that presentation. And today I still wanted to release something, so I thought it would be fun to go through 10 of my favorite fiction books. So this is ostensibly a top 10 list. I know the top 3 at least are my top 3, and the rest of them are sort of maybe in dubious order, but these are things that I really enjoyed reading, and I hope maybe you can find something that you'll enjoy as well on this list. Now, a couple of ground rules before we get started. Number one, I have not included graphic novels because I could probably fill an entire list with graphic novels on another day. And number two, no 2 books from the same series. Now, I'm not saying the same author is off limits, but the same series is. Now, that being said, let's get started with number 10, which is Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson. And just to let you know, I am very agnostic when it comes to the format of books I read. I like Kindle books, I like physical books, and I like audiobooks. So if I don't own the physical edition, I'm just going to pop a picture up right here like this. And Snow Crash is on the list because I absolutely love Stephenson's writing, and I love cyberpunk fiction. This is the book that actually coined the term avatar in cyberspace terms, and I really enjoyed it. There's one other Stephenson book I've read so far that I like more, which is coming up in the list, but I highly recommend this book if you like cyberpunk fiction at all. Number 9 on my list is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Now, this is a book that didn't really change my life or teach me any big lessons or anything, but I just absolutely enjoyed listening to it. It's a book about basically virtual reality, a kid who goes into a huge virtual reality world, and there's all these 80s video game and movie and music references. And even though I wasn't born in the 80s, a lot of it was stuff I watched growing up as a kid. So it was just super cool to basically nerd out while listening to this book. And I did listen to it. I will recommend the audiobook version of this book. While I usually like to create the character voices in my head and narrate my own way, I really liked Will Wheaton's narration of this book. Will Wheaton's amazing in general, and his narration of this book is great. So definitely check it out. Read it either way, but I love the audiobook version. Book number 8 is The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut. You're probably getting a little bit of a sci-fi vibe here, and yes, that's the majority of my favorite fiction is sci-fi and fantasy, but I absolutely loved this book. It has a lot of themes about free will and actually made me think a lot, and my friend Martin, who is actually my roommate, recommended this book to me, and I believe it is his favorite book. Didn't really top the favorite list for me, but I did enjoy it a lot, so it makes this list. Book number 7 is Ender's Shadow. Yes, Shadow, not Game. I absolutely love Ender's Game. It's also one of my favorite books. However, I thought Shadow was a little bit more compelling because it tells the story from Bean's perspective instead of Ender's, and there's a little bit more grittiness to it. There's a little bit more of the tactical, nitty-gritty details of how they win the battles, and I really liked seeing his perspective, and also that secondary perspective opened up a lot of new perspective on Ender's thoughts. So definitely check it out if you haven't read it, but I would recommend reading Ender's Game first. Book number 6 is The Desert Spear by Peter Brett. Now, this book is part of a series called The Demon Cycle, and there are currently 4 books out right now. I've read all 4, and I'm eagerly awaiting the 5th one, which I believe should be the conclusion of the series. Basically, it's a story about these demons who come up at night, and they're basically invincible and unkillable to all the humans until, well, you'll just have to read what happens. But it's pretty darn cool, and this is the one book on my list that I like better than the original start of the series. I absolutely love the first one, which is called The Warded Man or The Painted Man, depending on where you live. But The Desert Spear has a much more interesting setting, in my opinion, and some cooler relationships that are built along its storyline. So definitely recommend the entire series, but the second one is my favorite so far. Book number 5 I actually own in print, and it is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I'm going to go on a limb here and say that the entire Mistborn series, at least the first 3 books, are my favorite in the number 5 category. I just arbitrarily picked the first one because I think I love all 3 equally. But the reason I like Mistborn so much is, number 1, it's just a great fantasy series, but number 2, the magic system is so well thought out, and it's actually got limitations and hard rules, and I think that makes for more interesting character interactions and situations than more arbitrary, just whiz-bang magic systems like more Tolkien-esque fiction will have. So that's why I love them, and I will also note that there is a new series of Mistborn books called the Wax and Wayne trilogy, which there are 2 of those out currently, and those ones are usually shorter. I think they're like each one is like half the length of a normal Mistborn book, but they're also really great fun to read, so I'd recommend basically everything in the Mistborn series, and pretty much everything Brandon Sanderson has wrote is great. Book number 4 is The Diamond Age by Neal Stephenson, and yes, this is the second recommendation for Neal Stephenson on this list, and over on my bookshelf right there, I have pretty much every other book Neal Stephenson has written since then, except for Seven Eves, which is his newest one. I have yet to get through those ones because, well, reading can be tough when you run a business, but I did get through both Snow Crash and Diamond Age, and I think I liked the Diamond Age a little bit more, probably because of the character interactions, but also because his mixture of the cyberpunk, like ridiculous future nanotech setting mixed with the Victorian, like the resurgence of Victorian fashion and ideals was just awesome. And I don't know, everything Neal Stephenson just dreams up in that head of his is just super cool to read about. And now this was another one that I did in audiobook format, and I'm not sure if the audiobook version was as compelling as the Will Wheaton narration of Ready Player One, but I really did like it. So if you're into audiobooks, I would recommend the audiobook version of this, though if you're not, reading it would be cool too. Book number 3 on this list. Well, if you've been drawing conclusions about my taste based on the other books on this list, you've probably been wondering if this one's going to come up, and yes, it is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I absolutely love this book. This was recommended to me on a whim from my friend Carly. I read nothing about it going in, and honestly, I think that's like the best book reading experience you can have. So yeah, I like just taking things on blind recommendation if they are good. I got lucky with this one because it is absolutely amazing. Like Mistborn, it has incredibly well thought out magic system with physical properties and limitations, but also I just like the characterization of Kvothe a little bit more than the characters in Mistborn, and that's why this book gets a little bit higher spot on the list from me. All right, moving on to the penultimate pick on this list, and this might be where any dislikes for this video come from because my pick for number 2 is Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, which is a fan fiction, yes. Now, this fan fiction story was written by an artificial intelligence researcher named Eliezer Yudkowsky, who's also written a lot on rationality and critical thinking, and this book is basically his attempt at teaching rationality and critical thinking without you really realizing it. So this book basically imagines a universe where Harry Potter, instead of just being a normal 11-year-old boy, is essentially a genius who thinks through everything rationally and like a scientist. And what I love about this book is all the other characters are adjusted to match Harry, so it's not like he's just going through and having an easy time of everything. All the other characters are much smarter, and if you like things like Sherlock or Death Note or more rational, cerebral pieces of fiction, then I think you'll really enjoy this. I'm not going to say you're going to enjoy it more than canon. I personally do, but I don't want to say that it's better than canon because obviously it builds upon the already excellent foundation of story and setting and characters that J.K. Rowling has built. So I absolutely love the canon, but for me, I think I enjoyed MOR a little bit more, and also it got me into reading about rationality and reading about critical thinking skills and heuristics and biases and things that have made me a better thinker. So this is one of those rare pieces of fiction that has made a tangible change in my life, and that's why it gets such a high place on this list. But it's not the top pick because that one is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, of course. Now, if you've read the About section on my YouTube channel or any of the pages on my website, you've probably noticed the references to this book, and it's no secret that this is my absolute favorite piece of fiction, which is why I have the faux leather cover bound edition of all 5 of the books. I absolutely love these books so much. They are ridiculously imaginative, and I just love the dry British humor that Douglas Adams puts into them. Just read these books, no matter who you are. They are fantastic. They're weird. And if you watched the movie and didn't like it, well, I absolutely love the movie, so we're kind of on opposite sides with that thing. But I will say that the book version is just so much better. I grew up listening to the audiobook version of this book every night for years, and there are actually multiple versions. There's a version that is read by an entire cast where every character has their own voice actor. That one's pretty cool. Stephen Fry has his own narration version, which I believe is the most popular. That one's awesome, but the one I recommend, if you can find it, is the one that is read by Douglas Adams himself. His narration is just amazing. It's just awesome. So I will try to find that and link to it in the description below, but if I can't, well, it is up to you to Google it, I suppose. So those are my top 10 favorite fiction books, at least in this point in my life. Now I'm curious to know what you think of the books on this list. Do you like some of them? Do you dislike some of them? And I also want to know, based on what I've told you about my favorite fiction books, what should I read next? All right, guys, that's it for this week's video. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you, as always, next week.